Okay, so the next step in our video series is about hormone balancing. So, truthfully, in men and women, it's all about your balance of your hormones. So, hormones have to be measured at the right time of the month in menstruating women in order to interpret the results properly. In men or women using hormones, testing is aimed or has to be timed specifically to your last dose. And this varies between men and women. It also varies based on the form of hormones that you're using. Hormones are bound to transport proteins for delivery to organs and tissues. Okay, that's SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. So, serum or blood levels of hormones measure the total amount of hormones that are produced or being absorbed into your bloodstream. Both bound and unbound levels are represented in that blood level piece of on that piece of paper. The saliva testing measures only unbound hormones that are available to bind to the receptor sites, and urine measures hormone metabolites. So, how are your hormones being broken down in your body? So, again, I really say over and over again that the right test needs to be done in the right body at the right time. So, again, blood testing tells you the total amount of hormones that are either being produced or absorbed into the bloodstream. We also need to understand what does your brain think is going on? So, what are those regulating hormones saying? So, we have feedback loops when it comes to your hormones. So, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and thyroid stimulating hormone. We need to know what does your brain think is happening. And we also need to take a look at all of the precursor hormones, the things that we talked about in your last video. So, what does the brain think is happening is very important in both men and women. Again, we have to do the right test in the right body at the right time. So, saliva testing tells us the amount of hormones that are unbound and being delivered to the tissues. This is very helpful in sometimes men who are doing testosterone injections, but they're having all kinds of strange symptoms, or always in women that are using topical delivery of estrogen. So things like estradiol patches or estrogen cream or a troche. So all very important for us to look at saliva levels. Again, right test, right body, right time. So urine testing tells us how is your body breaking down your hormones. It really is important to help assess the risk from hormone therapy, to take a look at your potential toxic exposures, and even for us to consider some gut health markers. So I've been doing this for 10 years. And I have met a lot of different providers who do functional medicine, and many of them become experts in one type of testing. So they'll just do blood levels, or they'll just do saliva, or they just do a urine test. That does not help you. Each type of test provides answers to different questions. We have to be able to ask all the questions and collect all the different data pertaining to your case in order to keep you properly balanced, feeling well, and minimizing your risk from hormone balancing interventions. In women, this is what the typical hormone cycle looks like. And it's pretty surprising to me how many providers don't think about what this picture looks like when they're trying to regulate hormones in women. This is the cycle that we're trying to mimic, and we want you to stay, when you're cycling, as close to this as possible. Okay? So this is just a great picture of what is it that we're trying to accomplish. So when it comes to collecting your data, again, the timing of when we collect your lab results is very important on whether or not you're a cycling woman. So if you're a cycling woman, we really want to do your testing typically around day 19, 20, or 21, right when that progesterone is peaking. Okay. Another thing that's really important to just keep in mind is that we're not necessarily going for any specific goal number on a piece of paper. We're really looking at where do you feel the best with your hormones, and how do we make sure your hormones are all balanced to each other. So In men, the most common causes of low testosterone that I see include things like age, stress, sedentary lifestyle, low precursors, all the things that we talked about in the last video, and nutritional deficiencies, or even being on too much of a statin. I'm not anti-statin. Statins are not a bad thing, but everything in the proper dosing is very important, and then monitoring side effects and outcomes. In my men, testosterone replacement therapy is absolutely always the last thing that I go to. I want to first make sure that we're optimizing your precursors and optimizing your body's natural production of testosterone for as long as we possibly can. Okay? The older you get, though, as a man, the more likely you will need TRT. And that's okay. It's just waiting to start that until it's absolutely necessary. And again, it's not just about the levels of hormones. In men and women, estrogen is cleared out of the body through the same detox pathways as toxins. So estrogen clearance relies on genetics, diet, liver health, microbiome balance, environmental exposures. And your estrogen receptors are very sensitive to environmental load of xenoestrogens, which are chemicals that are biologically really shaped similarly to estrogen. And so they bind to those estrogen receptors. So sometimes we have to do more thinking about managing your health than just looking at estrogen on a piece of paper. We might want to take a little bit of a look at your toxic burden as well. Some of you listen to a lot of videos, and so you might have heard the term estrobolome. That really reflects it's a term that's used for microbiome, so gut health that promotes poor estrogen elimination. That's all you need to know. So when you have certain bacteria, they make an enzyme, beta-glucuronidase, that actually releases estrogen that was already bound for elimination. So it's like it got put into the garbage truck, and then these microbiomes took it and tossed it back out again into the street, meaning your blood vessels. And then those estrogen metabolites can go and bind to your estrogen receptors, really increasing your risk of negative outcomes from estrogen. Other things that can really impact how your body eliminates or deals with or even creates estrogen is sugar. So excess sugar intake really does get stored as fat in your cells, and then that fat can produce inflammatory proteins and estrogen. But this is estrogen that's being produced in the fat cells, so we're not going to catch it in a blood level of estrogen. Okay, so it's being made more in the tissues, and then it's being delivered to the tissues, causing all kinds of symptoms and negative health outcomes. And for people who are really trying hard to be healthy and they're eating things like yogurt, even organic yogurt, take a look at that nutritional label on your peach flavored organic yogurt, because I can guarantee you it's going to have at least 24 grams of sugar, which is the entire amount of sugar for a woman in a day would be in that yummy organic flavored yogurt. So reading labels is important, sorry. Liver health is another big thing that impacts our hormone balance. Your liver does a lot of things for you. So it breaks down medication and it deals with sugar intake, alcohol. And when we consume things like sugar, alcohol, fast food, and we're not really necessarily moving quite a bit, then that really impacts the liver's ability to properly break down and eliminate hormones safely. So when we talk about hormone balancing, it's really about creating a safe environment in your body. There are genetics that impact hormone elimination as well. So some of you may be familiar with things like COMT and MTHFR. Some of you may already have had those tested. I don't do genetic testing in every single patient, but when we're really concerned about your risk factors, I definitely do look at genetics. Or if you come in and you just ask to get your genetics done, we will do that. And knowing your genetics can really help us make a targeted diet and lifestyle and nutritional plan for you in order to support any negative genetic SNPs you might have. So, this is a pretty busy slide, and I just want you to be aware that estrogen breaks down into further pathways. So, the good estrogen is this number two, estrogen. And then we have identified other estrogens that are increase our risk for cancer, particularly the 4, but also the 16. Okay? Now, back when we were told that estrogen was really bad for women, tons and tons and tons of women were put on this Premarin. Premarin, coming from a horse, mare, female horse. That Premarin increased women's to bad estrogen, basically, right? So that is not something that I prescribe for women, and just being mindful that safer forms of estrogen exist, and those are the ones that I use for sure. So also when it comes to the negative estrogens, that 16.1 is associated with things like obesity, low thyroid function, high meat diet, inflammation, pesticide toxicity. So again, we can test all these levels in your body if it's something that you are concerned about. The most important thing for you to just come away from this talk with is that we need to know your data. You need to know your data. Your hormones don't exist on a piece of paper or in a lab result. They exist in your body. So what's the environment in your body that's impacting your hormone levels? What are your family risk factors? And how do your diet, lifestyle, stress, and sleep balance impact your personal hormone balance? So, again, we need to know appropriate testing of all of your key hormones. So, the precursors, we have to understand how your thyroid hormones are working. And then we need to take a good look at your blood sugar sensitivity and then some vitamin levels. You can support your own estrogen metabolism. The first thing really is to know your genes if this is something that you're very concerned about. And then we know that there are certain key nutrients that can really help you based on your genetics. And those things include things like SAMe, methionine, B2, B6, B12, folate, betaine, and then always decreasing stress. Superfoods, broccoli, if you're not having GI issues, eating loads of broccoli certainly can help. And engaging in appropriate exercise, eating freshly ground flax seeds, enjoying organic soy. Kudzu, I don't know how much you'd really want to eat it, but I think you can get it in some supplements. And then this indole 3 carbonyl dim or sulforaphanes, this I3C. So these are the things that we use to help support estrogen metabolism as we start balancing your hormone levels. So I do encourage you to take a deep dive into your health, and I'd love for you to schedule your initial functional medicine visit today so we can start collecting your data. And I just like this quote: you can't stop waves, but you can learn how to surf. So thank you for listening to this, and I'll see you in the next video.